Hello, everybody. I am super excited to be joining you today. Welcome to our webinar, What Development Professionals Need to Know About the Google Ad Grant. Just to introduce myself really quick, my name is Jessica, and I'm going to be hosting our live webinar today. So as people are getting in, as people are getting settled, I want to run through some really quick logistics of our platform, Livestorm. So first thing, Livestorm runs best on Google Chrome. So if you are using a different web browser and you're running into any sort of technical difficulty, sometimes switching that can help. You also want to make sure that your browser is up to date. If neither of those things help, sometimes leaving the session and coming back can fix things. And worst comes to worst, if you've tried all of these options and you're still having some trouble, the session is being recorded and that recording will be sent to you as soon as we wrap up here. So no worries if you miss anything, no worries if you have any audio trouble, it is being recorded. Secondly, I am excited to talk to you today. I would welcome you to leave your comments in the chat. If you have any questions that you'd like me to answer during the Q&A portion of the session, you can try leaving them in the chat, or if the chat is really busy, it can also be helpful to leave it in the questions tab. That makes sure that they kind of stand out from the rest of the questions that are in the chat, makes it more likely that I will see them. So with that, I am going to get things started. And while I'm doing that, I would love if you could put in the chat where you are joining from. So I am joining from Atlanta, where it is very breezy today. It started, those of you who are Northerners will probably laugh a little bit at me, but it started today in like the 60s, and now it's down to, it feels like 35 with the wind. So it's getting kind of chilly here. All right, let's take a look. You guys are such a responsive chat. Thanks so much for this. All right, we've got New York City. We've got another person in Georgia. Heyo. We've got Minneapolis, San Francisco, the Bay Area, St. Louis, Tuscaloosa. Very nice. Oh, Annapolis. It's rainy there, hanging out with all of the Naval Academy midshipmen, freezing in Chicago, Phoenix, Arizona, Detroit, Michigan. We are all over the place. Oh, man. So exciting. In New York, it's 60 degrees. That's crazy. Oh, we got another Atlanta person. Shout out. Boise. Man, we got all kinds of folks in the chat today. Well, that's super exciting. Santa Fe, New Mexico. Ah, beautiful place. I love it there. Austin, Texas, also great. Yeah, my mom lives in Las Cruces, so I've been all over New Mexico. It's a great state. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and launch into the things that you guys are actually here to hear about. What development professionals, need to know about the Google Ad Grant. So just to set an agenda for our chat today, I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to give you a really quick overview of the Google Ad Grant. We're going to talk about like what the program is, who's eligible, how to apply, and how folks use it, kind of at a high level, just so you understand what all we're talking about. And then I want to dig in to the elements that maybe don't get discussed as much of like how it relates specifically to development concerns. So how are we reaching engaged supporters? What else is important for you to know as it relates to the Google Ad Grant? I'll talk a little bit about ROI, things like that, and then wrap up by leaving some time for questions as well as my contact information and a little bit more about getting attention. All right. So, about me, I am the business lead at Getting Attention. I'm a digital marketer with over 6 years of experience in the mission driven sector. Previously, I've worked in SEO and social media management, and now I work in paid search with my work at Getting Attention. So, I've seen a little bit of everything when it comes to nonprofit marketing. And at Getting Attention, we specialize in helping nonprofits get better results from the Google Ad Grant by partnering with experienced ads experts from all around the world. So, that is a little bit about me. Now I want to transition to talking a little bit about the Google Ad Grant. So first of all, just in case, usually when I have these sessions, there will be at least some folks who already have the ad grant. They're kind of looking for how can we do better or what else could we learn about this. Then there's going to be some folks who are like, maybe I've heard about this program, but I'm not super familiar. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. The Google Ad Grant is a program from Google that provides up to $10,000 per month in what I like to call Google Search Ads credits. So the reason I call it ads credits, it is an in-kind donation. So those of you who are, you know, old pros at development already kind of understand what I mean by that. But for any of you who are maybe getting your feet wet, an in-kind donation basically means it's not a form of cash, it's not a form of currency. It is kind of like a gift card that you can spend in the Google Ads account. So what it allows you to do is run ads kind of similar to what you see in the picture here. So I searched donate to Glacier National Park and I was served an ad for one of our clients, Glacier National Park Conservancy. So that paid search ad appeared at the top of the results, took up a good bit of the results page before I was able to scroll. It even appeared above the organic results. So that in a nutshell is what the premise of the Google Ad Grant is. That's kind of what the program is designed to do. And we'll talk about some of that in a little bit more detail in a bit. But first, I want to cover who's eligible and who's not. One of the things that I also want to give just like a little asterisk about at the top of this is that we work primarily with US organizations, not exclusively, but we are kind of most familiar with the US environment. So I'm going to refer to a few like tax structures that are specific to the US. The ad grant is available in lots of different countries around the world. So if you are calling in from Mexico, from Ireland, from Japan, it's late at night if you are in Japan, but the ad grant is also available in your country. What you will want to do is just double check the requirements against your own sort of local requirements. Every once in a while, they're mostly the same, but every once in a while, there are a few extra hoops to jump through. So just something to be aware of. But for US based nonprofits, to be eligible for the Google Ad Grant, you need to be registered as a 501c3. So that part is super important. You can't be a 501c6. You can't be like a fiscal sponsored organization. You do have to be a 501c3. And the other question I've gotten before is like, is it sufficient to be registered at the state level, or do we also have to be registered at the national level? Google is going to be looking for that national registration. So you should be registered as a 501c3 or your local equivalent. So, off the top of my head, I'm familiar a little bit with like Canada, for example, you need to be a registered charity. Again, it's usually basically the same thing, but you want to look in your own country on what the exact specification you need is. So let's say we've ticked that first box. We say, yep, we are a 501c3. What's next? The other requirement that Google gives is a high quality website, which is super specific. And I'm sure all of you are going, yes, I know exactly what that means. Don't worry, we're going to break that down. So there are three things Google's looking for when it is looking for a high quality website. The first, pretty easy one, even though it sounds the most complicated, is that you need an SSL certification. So that means basically that information that's being transmitted in your site needs to be transmitted securely. So you can understand if we think about Google's stake in this, why Google would require that, right? If they're running ads, if they're potentially encouraging people to go to your website who are then being encouraged to donate, Google does not want to be tangled up in some sort of data breach scandal that they weren't even responsible for, right? The really good news about SSL certification is that basically every modern website has it already. So it is very seldom that I see nonprofits get rejected for the ad grant because of their SSL certification. If you're using Google Chrome, a really quick and easy way to check if yours is up to date is if you go to your website, up in the address bar, there will be a little icon on the left side. It looks like two lollipops on its side. You'll click on that. There will be like a little icon. It should say, it looks like a little lock and it should say connection is secure. If you click on that, it'll say like certificate is valid, but really what you're looking for is connection is secure. Another thing you can look for is like, does your address say HTTPS or does it just say HTTP? Usually, like I said, most modern websites, like the vast majority of them, already have this taken care of. If you find that you do not have your SSL certification up to date, it's worth getting in touch with whoever manages your website because that's super important. That's something you will want, irrespective of whether you go on to use the Google Ad Grant or not. But yeah, like I said, unless you're rocking with a website from, I don't know, 1998 or something, you probably already have that box checked. So great, we did that. The second requirement, also fairly easy. You need to have organizational information on your website. Usually what Google means like by that is that they are looking for how can people get in touch with you, like the actual folks at the organization? How can people engage with your organization in, I guess I'll call it like a matters of business sort of day-to-day sense. So we're talking like email addresses that people can reach out to if they've got questions. Maybe if you have a physical address, what's your address? Contact information. Some people choose to put their EIN or their like tax ID number on there. I think that's a nice to have, not a need to have, but certainly I would not discourage it because I think it promotes like transparency and giving and things like that. But these are the types of things we're looking for. So your mission and vision statement also falls into that category. These are really just the basics that like if someone was doing some research about you, they could say, yes, you're a real nonprofit. Yes, there are real people here. Yes, here's how we could learn more, right? So we've got our SSL certification, we've got our organization information. The last thing about a high quality website is you need to have unique mission relevant content, which is really broad. We're going to talk a little bit about what Google, when we think about Google, not so much as the company, but as the actual product, the crawler that crawls the websites, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what it can look at and what it's looking for. But this is sort of the everything else about your website. So these are like the pages where you are talking about what your mission is, what cause you exist to support, why the work you do matters, who you help, more information about your programs, even your donation page, like what do people's donation dollars go to? What are sort of your urgent campaigns? That's kind of the everything else. The good news about the mission relevant content is that the bar for that may not be as intimidating and as high as you might be thinking, just sort of hearing me talk about it. I'm kind of talking about a really fleshed out, really robust website. That is the goal. But like if you're looking to get this going and then continue to build over time, that's totally okay. I've seen one page websites get approved for the grant. I've seen fairly fairly low information websites get approved. So if the objective is simply getting the grant, it's really designed to be quite attainable. We'll talk about the sign up process in just a second, but it is really meant to be a very easy bar. That said, there are a couple of types of organizations that are not eligible for the grant. So I want to roll through those really quick. So hospitals and healthcare organizations are not eligible for the ad grant. Schools and universities, as well as government organizations. If you're a school or a university, they do have a separate suite of products that is designed for those in the education space called Google for Education. So you can look into that. And this has never been like published by Google, but this is if I were to take my best guess at why these types of organizations are not eligible, I suspect it has to do with receiving public funding in the form of like, government infrastructure, things like that. So I would say if you are an organization listening to this and you're like, well, we're almost a healthcare organization, but we're almost a nonprofit, we kind of straddle the line. Maybe you help, children receive cleft palate surgeries or something like that, right? I would say it's worth your time to apply for the ad grant. It doesn't take very long. And I have seen organizations that have sometimes surprised me get through the ad grant process. So I really don't think it's designed to be a super exclusionary process. I think, if anything, the eligibility criteria are meant to prevent Google from having any sort of like conflict of interest issues as it relates to this program. So when in doubt, I would say go ahead and apply. You'll get a decision from Google, and that'll clarify that. Which leads me to, how do you apply? It is a super simple process. I think as development professionals, when you hear grant, you're probably thinking, okay, like great, like I got to set aside a week of my time. I got to gather all this information. I got to make a case for support. I got to detail out a budget, etc. This is not like that. It is honestly a lot more similar to signing up for a software service. It usually takes about 10 minutes or less. And so it's kind of a three-step process. And basically between each step, you're going to wait for approval, wait for some confirmation. So the first step, and actually technically this one is optional, but I do recommend it just because I've found that it smooths the way for the rest of the steps in the process, is claiming your nonprofit on Percent. They have really recently rebranded to Good Stack, so you can get there either way. But basically, what this organization is they are the validation partner. You can kind of think of them as like a background checker for Google. So the role of Good Stack will be to basically look at the application, confirm that they're a nonprofit, et cetera. They have a huge database. So most nonprofits that I have looked up, especially in the past like 2 or 3 months, are already in their database. So I'm a big fan of claiming your nonprofit because one, I think obviously it is helpful for the Google Ad Grant process. And two, I'm just of the belief that nonprofits should own their own accounts and should be in control of accounts that exist sort of on their behalf. So there's a very good chance you are already in their database. And since you already are, you should be in control of that. So they're going to basically ask you just a few questions about like your mission and some contact information, things like that. This is a great place to clarify if there is anything unusual about your situation. So just to give you like an example of one client situation that popped up. We work with an organization called the Addiction Research Institute. When we get into the world of like addiction and substance use, et cetera, there can be some trickiness as it relates to the Google Ad Grant. That would be a whole topic for another day. If you guys have a lot of interest in that, we can dive into that at some future webinar. But suffice it to say, there is a specific extra certification that certain types of organizations need. It can be a little costly. So when we were working with this client, we wanted to evaluate whether or not they were going to need it. It was actually the team at Percent that was able to kind of look through what they do. They basically gather funding for research. So they are not themselves handling addiction treatment in any way. They are more of a awareness and fundraising type of organization. So Percent was the one who basically said, hey, you're good, this doesn't violate any policies. You don't need this extra certification. And then we were able to go through the rest of Google's process pretty smoothly. So that's one example. I have a couple others that I could share at some point, but those are the reasons why I recommend getting squared away with the validation partner first. The second step, once you are all signed up with Percent, is you are going to apply for Google for Nonprofits. Now, Google for Nonprofits is basically an umbrella account that gives you access to a suite of products. So, for example, when you get into Google for Nonprofits, you gain access to Google's Workspace, you gain access to YouTube for Nonprofits, of course, the ad grant, and then Google Earth. So, when you apply for Google for Nonprofits, you're only going to need a couple of things. You'll need your website, your mission and vision statement, and your EIN. Super simple. You'll put all those in. Google will ask you a couple questions just about how you would identify yourself. I think this is for their own metrics. I have never observed there to be a wrong answer to those questions. And once you submit that application, you should get a confirmation email saying, yep, we got your application. Give us a few days to look through it and we'll get you an answer. Usually, it takes 1 to 3 business days. I have observed recently that it has been taking a while, so I would say up to 2 weeks is pretty normal for any of these steps. If your application has gone longer than that, it's worth reaching out. They'll usually give you a support point of contact that you can reach out to if you have more questions or if your application is taking a while. So ideally, we get that email saying, great job, you've been approved. And if you are not eligible for Google for Nonprofits for any reason, they'll tell you, hey, we don't think your organization is eligible. Once you get approved for Google for Nonprofits, you can log in and you'll see that list of products that I named earlier, and there will be an ad grants logo. That's that little A that's on the slide here. And you will be able to apply for the ad grant. This process has gotten easier and easier over time. So what you do is you click on the ad grant logo. There will be a little button next to it that says activate products. So you'll click there. And you will watch a video and check a box saying that you watched the video. The video basically talks about, hey, here's the ad grant, here's our policies, etc. And then you will wait a few days again for that approval. So again, same thing. We're looking for a confirmation email. Make sure you got that. If you didn't get that, your application may just not have gone through. But once you get that confirmation email, then you're waiting for an approval email. So again, usually 1 to 3 business days, can be up to 2 weeks. And it'll either say, congratulations, you're in the ad grant program. Here's the next steps. And they'll send you a couple of emails about how to get your account set up. Or they'll send you one saying, hey, we have not approved you for the ad grant. The two most common reasons that I have seen for the ad grant getting disapproved. One of them is like website speed. So there are a couple of things you can look at with that. So um, sometimes if you're like, I don't really know, like our website loads just fine. I've never had an issue with it. No one's ever reported an issue with it to me. I've tried it on a couple devices and it's loading fine. Sometimes it just means that maybe your website was having a hiccup at the exact moment that Google happened to be checking. Honestly, with those, if the website otherwise looks normal, I'll usually just send them through again and usually they get approved on the second try. Sometimes if you're like, "Oh, yeah, our website does take a little bit to load," there are some easy fixes you can do, like compressing the image sizes, lazy loading, things like that. So, um, there are some tricks you can do to get it to load faster. So first of all, website load speed is usually the most common one. The second most common one would be, like thin content. So this most frequently happens for folks who have the most bare bones version of a website. So they have, like, only a few sentences saying who they are and what they do. They don't really have much information about like their impact, the information folks need to get in touch with them, etc. The fix for that, again, is super simple. You're going to want to take a step back and work on putting a couple of extra pages, putting more information on your website, basically just making it more thorough. I think a good like rule of thumb for this would be like if someone who had no information whatsoever landed on your website, could they figure out who you are and what you do? Once you're done with that, you can resubmit it. And that kind of goes in general for most things with the Google Ad Grant. It's really not meant to be punitive. It's really meant to be a tool. So Google has some standards to keep it, which we're going to talk about in a second. But it's really not designed to be like a one strike, you're out type of thing. So I want to kind of take the pressure down off of this because it really is designed to be achievable for most nonprofits. So let's talk about what it takes to keep the Google Ad Grant. So first of all, you need to get at least one conversion per month. So that means that users must take at least one meaningful action on your site as a result of clicking on your ads. So when I say conversions, the cool thing about conversions is that basically you get to choose what they are. And if they can be measured online, then you could theoretically set them as a conversion. So I usually recommend having a variety of conversions. So not just donations, but maybe also signing up for emails so that you can get folks who are ready to be kind of nurtured over time. Maybe folks entering some sort of giveaway. Maybe folks. I'm trying to think of other common ones. Volunteering is a huge one, etc. You can apply a lot of these different things to conversions, but you need to get at least one. So that's also why it's beneficial to have a mix. You also need to get at least a 5% click through rate. So at least 5% of the people who see your ad need to click on it. So best way to do that is by making sure that your ads are highly relevant, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail later on. These other things are less of a concrete metric and more just like things to be aware of when it comes to compliance. So, first of all, you are not going to get good results in the Google Ad Grant if you do not use a good account structure. So, what I mean by that is you need multiple campaigns running with varied ad groups. When I say multiple, the next question I think that I get a lot is like, how many? There is not a one size fits all answer, but what we're trying to avoid here is if you fit like you have one campaign and you're putting your fundraising goals and your awareness goals and your program sign up goals all in there, it's going to confuse the system. It's not going to have a good time figuring out what ads are best for which audience, et cetera. So we want to make sure our account is clean and sort of well structured, and that's going to help you get better results from it. You also want to make sure you are driving people to good landing pages. When I say landing pages, what I mean is the page on your website that folks land on after they click on your ad. We want well-structured pages that load quickly. The more that folks have good experiences, the more that they click, they act on your site, they click around, etc., the better your site is going to be viewed in the eyes of Google, and the better over time you will be able to perform in ad auctions, which we'll talk about in a second. A couple of other things to keep in mind. There is a $2 per click bid cap in ad grant accounts. This is kind of it's not an outdated rule in the sense that it still exists, but it's a little bit of an outdated concern in the sense that it's very easy to work around. So the way to work around it is to use a maximize conversions bid strategy. So what that means, when I say bid, what I'm talking about is you have the option to tell Google how much a click from somebody searching a certain keyword is worth to you. So for example, if you are an animal shelter and you're in Atlanta and someone is in Atlanta and they're searching animal shelter, you might tell Google, hey, that click is worth more to me than somebody searching, I don't know, yard services, right? So if you were setting your own bid, Google says you can't bid more than $2 per click. That's because Google wants to prevent people from really just like going nuts and absolutely like ruining the search results by bidding all $10,000 on like a one click or something, you know, something ridiculous like that. Maximize Conversions uses Google's machine learning, takes the bidding control out of your hands, lets Google set the price. Google is not worried about Google setting the price, so they'll let you bid higher than that, which allows you to access more competitive keywords. So that's my little rant about the $2 bid cap. The other thing, which is easy to set up an automated rule for, is you need a 3 or better quality score for your keywords. So Google is giving you free money to advertise. It wants to make sure you're running high quality ads and bringing in high quality audiences, basically that you're making them look good, right? So a 3 is actually not a super, super high bar. Keywords are scored out of 10. So you need a 3 or better. Like I said, most accounts you can set up an automated rule to kind of filter out any low value keywords, low quality keywords that might crop up. All right. The last thing I want to talk about in this kind of overview section, at least I think it's the last thing, is the uses for the ad grant. So we've talked a ton about like, how do you get the grant? How do you keep the grant? What is even the grant? Now I kind of want to make it a little more concrete of like, how do organizations apply it to what they do? And then we're going to drill even deeper into this. So awareness building is a huge one. I think it is worth keeping in mind, especially since I'm talking to folks who work in development and fundraising. that the Google Ad Grant is a marketing tool. So it can very much be used to support fundraising outcomes. But what I don't want people to walk away from here with is saying, oh, this is the golden goose. This is it. Like we'll do this and then we'll have, $8 million in new funding next year. It would be great if it worked that way. Unfortunately, if it did, everybody would already be doing it. So it is a marketing tool. I think it's a really useful one for reasons we'll talk about. But the best use for the Google Ad Grant is to improve awareness of your organization, get in front of new supporters. I'm a huge fan of pairing that with, we talked about conversions earlier. I'm a huge fan of pairing that with collecting contact information, with the goal being that you are not only finding new people who are interested in what you do and bringing them to the site. That's step one. But then how do we keep these people in our ecosystem? And then how do we nurture them so that they ideally are becoming more engaged with us over time? That's kind of that step two part. Driving revenue is something, however, that is possible with the Google Ad Grant. A really common myth that I hear is that it's like not possible to get donations or to raise money with the ad grant. That's not true. It's not the primary purpose of it, but it can be done. So some examples of what we will do with our clients, highlighting donation pages and donation opportunities, as well as other revenue driving opportunities. So depending on the structure of the nonprofit, sometimes they have merchandise that they sell. So like t-shirts, blankets, what have you. Sometimes their programs might cost money to participate in. We can drive things of that nature. Also, sometimes events. Sometimes there's a ticket sale element. That's also all fair game. What you need to know for driving revenue with a Google Ad Grant is that anywhere you are trying to ask somebody to give you money, it needs to be written on the page somewhere what those proceeds go towards in order for it to be fair game. Because what Google does not want people who are actually businesses masquerading as nonprofits saying, hey, submit a donation here, and then it never actually goes anywhere. So they want a line that basically says, hey, proceeds go to support, your organization. Yeah, I think that is pretty much what I had prepared to say on driving revenue. Upcoming events is another big one. So you can promote different types of events with the Google Ad Grant. If you have a really mission focused one, so I use that animal shelter example, maybe you've got a, hey, come out and play with the dogs. They are lonely and they need some friends. You could promote an event like that. You also can promote fundraising events. So, for example, maybe you've got an annual 5K or a golf fundraiser coming up. Those are great things to promote with the ad grant. Recruiting volunteers would also be another use for the ad grant. So you can find users who are in your area who are searching for topics related to your cause, which kind of helps you dial in on that audience much more directly rather than, say, posting a flyer in the local coffee shop or something that's casting a wider net, but maybe not honing in on people who are interested in what you do. All right, so how do you use the Google Ad Grant to reach engaged supporters? Basically, what is the mechanism by which all of this is working? Basically, the ad grant lets you take advantage of search engine marketing broadly and then paid search more specifically. So I want to talk about search engine marketing broadly because I think this is something that if you are outside the marketing world probably feels a little bit like witchcraft. Like we've all heard it's possible to rank organically. It's possible to run Google Ads, but who really knows how that works? I did not until I started working in this area. So in search engine marketing, you live and die by the keyword. So the keywords are, when I say keywords, what I mean is like the term that somebody is searching. That is a way for your audience to self select by interest. We can guess that somebody who is searching for adoptable dogs in Atlanta is looking to adopt a dog, or at least is very close to making a decision to adopt a dog, right? Versus reaching out, let's say by mail or some of these other channels and hoping that somebody who is the right person is hitting. So that's kind of the reason that search engine marketing is really popular. Google processes something like 8 billion with a B searches per day. So there is a ton of activity on the platform. And it is very possible to rank and to show up and to sort of be harvesting the ways that people are already behaving on that platform in order to get them looped in with your cause. The things that go into Google showing one website over another or showing one ad versus a different one. One of them is website quality. So this, again, we're going back to this idea that like your website needs to be fairly well built out. One question I get a lot is like, do ads directly impact organic search. When I say organic, what I mean is like those 10 blue links we're all used to seeing. None of them are ads. They're just sort of what Google thinks is the best answer. I get questions a lot of like, okay, if we do ads, will that improve our organic search? Or if we do organic, will it improve our ads? It's kind of a yes and no answer. So the more work you do to improve your website, to really have an eye to keywords, what are people searching? Are we kind of tailoring our content to really well answer that question while still being true to us, the better your results are going to be both in the paid and the organic search realm. Google understands a website the same way, whether it's understanding it for the purpose of showing an ad or whether it's understanding it for the purpose of ranking it in the organic search results. So overall, it is a net benefit. What is a little bit different is like Google's decision process of how to show ads, when to show ads, who to show ads to is a little bit different. It's separate from organic. So running ads will not directly improve your ranking, but to the extent that you are improving the website, it'll have beneficial impacts on both your organic search and your paid search. When we think about the world of ads, there are a couple of things that Google is taking into account. So one of them is user behavior. So this is where Google uses like past internet behavior, other signals like location of the person to show users the most relevant results. This is why when you search like, restaurants near me, you most of the time are going to get restaurants within maybe a 30-minute drive of your vicinity and not usually websites in like say France if you or me sitting in Atlanta. Not going to be super relevant to you in that moment. The other thing it looks at is website data. So the actions that people are taking on your site, maybe conversions completed, or if we were going to look at the organic side, even like how many other sites are linking to you, backlinks earned. These are additional sources of information that act as signals to Google of like who is going to be a good user experience. When we get down to like what Google's core interest is, Google wants to make sure that every time it's serving results, it is serving you the best possible results so that you will continue to use the platform, right? Google wants to be the go-to search engine. And so if we as marketers understand that that's Google's purpose, then we can figure out, okay, great. What we need to do then is figure out what information folks are looking for. How can we put that in our website, in our marketing, in our communications to make sure that Google views us positively? So I also kind of want to break down what search ads, when I talk about all these different things, like what we are talking about, because I think it would be helpful for just kind of making sure we're all on the same page. So when I talk about keywords, what I mean is like the search query. So in this example, I searched comedy museum. That's what triggers the ad. One thing that's interesting, I find it interesting. I hinted at the search ads like auction earlier. So when a search is completed, at that time of search, Google goes through an instantaneous process of what it calls the ad auction. So what it's doing basically is it's looking around at all the people who want to show up on that keyword and it's going, okay, we've got how many ad slots. It chooses that dynamically based on a ton of different factors, some of which are known, some of which are not. So like time of day, location, the user's behavior, etc. It'll say, okay, do I want to show an ad on this search? And it'll say yes. It'll say how many, maybe it shows two. Okay, then who gets top billing? And the other thing it's deciding is like what price does a click cost at this particular time in this particular search with this particular user. So it's extremely dynamic. We can contrast that with, say, like a radio or a television ad where it's like very fixed. We know exactly what time of day it's going to run. We know exactly how long it's going to last. We have an idea of how many people will be watching at any given time, and it's a very set structure. This is a little bit different. Those are all just kind of factoids that I think are very interesting. But when we get to the actual point where an ad is shown, couple of different parts of it. There's the headline, that's that blue. In this case, it's actually purple because I had already clicked on the ad, but this is the large text at the top. So I searched comedy museum. The headline says comedy museum for the National Comedy Center, which is one of our clients. So your headlines should include your keyword or a close variation. The ad text, which is right underneath it, provides more details. Ideally, we're including the keyword there too. The site links underneath are those like 4 or 5 blue links that you're seeing there. Yet you can use those as additional tools to drive users to key pages. So when you're thinking about the ad grant setup, like if those of you who might wear multiple hats and might be acting in your marketing capacity as well as your fundraising capacity, it can be useful to have a lot of different types of resources, even if the primary focus of the search was something different. So in this case, I searched comedy museum, right? That is a very broad type of search. It could be that I'm just curious if any existed, could be that I'm interested in going to one, could be that I had a great experience at the National Comedy Center and couldn't remember its name, but I'm interested in making a donation now, right? So they've included a bunch of different links here. They've got like directions to their museum, they've got their homepage, they've got a contact us, they've even got a donate link there so they can start to capture all these different intents. And the last thing, doesn't show up all of the time on every single search ad, but some search ads do include images. So it's good to have those in your account as well. They help draw the eye, they help just kind of make the ad more engaging. All right. So that's kind of how search engine marketing works. That's sort of the breakdown of a paid search ad. So the next question is like, what is the value of paid search? Or put differently, why include paid search as part of your marketing toolkit? Couple of reasons. And I think these are what help make paid search a really good complement to organic search. So, first of all, you have a high degree of control. You get to choose which pages that you are going to send people to. You get to choose which keywords to target. You can, to a certain extent, choose which audiences to reach, whether that is through kind of soft methods like keyword selection, or whether that's through more strict like location targeting or things like that. You don't get that level of control with organic. So it's nice to have both that organic, which is kind of always on, it's very slow moving, it's right there, and then also have paid where you can like really dial in your message. I mentioned slow moving. Speed is also a huge advantage of paid search. So when I would work in SEO, usually we would talk to clients, we would tell them, around 6 months to start seeing ranking improvements and about 12 to 18 months to start seeing folks taking the actions you're looking for on their website. So SEO is beneficial, and I'm not sort of dunking on that. I do think it's also a key part of anybody's brand toolkit, but takes a little while to get rolling. With ads, usually you can start seeing measurable, meaningful results within about 3 to 6 months. So it's a much faster platform. The other thing, and the thing that I think makes Google Ads specifically really, really cool, is the conversions element of it. So this uses machine learning to target people who are going to take those key actions, like joining a newsletter or donating, in a way that is much more like targeted than what you would see in organic search. So with paid search, you're using the same, it's a slightly different style of account, but it's the same technology that like businesses use when they want to find more leads or more customers or whatever. Google spent tons of money investing in a very smart machine that is getting very good at reading different signals, some of which we could probably guess, like maybe, age, gender, location, household income. We can guess about a lot of those things, but there's lots of signals that we would not even be able to begin to hone in on that Google can use. So Google is using all of that data that they're collecting to find the audiences that are going to be best for you. The really cool thing about that is that means that your ads results typically get better over time as Google finds more of the people who will convert as long as you're using that maximized conversion strategy. So those are a couple of reasons that I think the paid search tool is really cool. And then to connect it back to the Google Ad Grant, reason to use that is that the Google Ad Grant gives you that $10,000 per month budget without you having to come up with it out of pocket. So it's a cool way to diversify your marketing toolkit. I want to talk about the ways that it fits into a lot of other marketing because I think it's really tempting anytime we're learning about like a really exciting new marketing channel to be like, we'll just go really heavy on this one and we'll ignore all the other ones, and this will be our one true channel. And I think that is a bit of a mistake. But you can use ads to layer on to a lot of things you may already be doing. So in the fundraising realm, I have met grant, actual grant, not Google Ad Grant, professionals who will use ad grant data to help them gather information about how many people are interested in their programs, and they'll then turn around and use that to get funding from foundations and stuff like that. We have a client who does that actually, and that's one of the things that's meaningful for them. It also can help you with your web analytics. If you are not sure who your best audience is, getting more folks onto the website, getting the types of folks who are interested in your keywords on the website can also be a good way to begin to find out, hey, who is that best audience for us? Resource downloads is another really great conversion action. So this is really effective if you are, I find this is super common in like youth services or anything that has to do with providing resources for like parents, teachers, any kind of doctors, like folks like that. Resource downloads are really great. This is a great way to kind of spread your message. Social media button clicks. If you have your social media linked to your site, you can potentially send more folks there. This kind of can help you use the different channels that you have to amplify each other. Some types of messages might be more appropriate for social media, so there might be reasons to do it that way. Email signups is a huge one. This is one that I think is undervalued by a lot of marketers, but that I think is really beneficial because we know that email is a really great channel to get directly in front of your donors. So we can set up conversions in the ad grant to get more email signups, get more folks subscribing to those newsletters, and getting them in that ecosystem and being nurtured over time. Calls from ads is another huge one. So I find that local organizations are typically the ones who do this. So one of our clients is an animal shelter in South Carolina. They like calls from ads as kind of their primary metric for success. So that can be a really useful one. I think thrift stores would be another one that calls from ads can be useful. So lots of different ways to use conversions. All right. So I've talked a ton about sort of how do we think about search engine marketing. I want to just make sure I wrap up a couple of other loose ends about things I think are beneficial for development professionals to know about the ad grant. So the ad grant is a really powerful tool to take advantage of paid search, but it is really not the right tool for every single organization under the sun. It works best when your organization meets a few different conditions. So, first of all, I've talked about it before. I'm going to talk about it again. Your organization does need a strong website. So, ideally, you need to have more than one page. It's possible to get started with one page, but I think if we're looking at our clients who are most successful, they all have multi page websites. Ideally, there are also on site actions that people can be taking. What I mean by that is we have encountered organizations in the past where they have tons of great resources. These are sometimes organizations that are very new, not super mature yet. So they're linking out to tons of great resources from other more established organizations in their same field. So maybe in the realm of like healthcare or in the realm of like social justice. These are kind of common approaches. I would use caution with that purely because Google doesn't love a site that it views as like existing to send traffic somewhere else. We as humans understand the positive reasons that that's being done. But what it means is that Google's going to be like, I think that's kind of a thin website. I'd rather show a different site instead that's got more robust information on it. So you want to be thinking about your website. You want to be looking at it and saying, do we have enough here to address the questions, basically? The other thing I would caution folks to take a look at is Google does have some advertising policies that I have found in certain issue areas can be troubling. The advertising policies exist for a good reason. Ideally, they're meant to not exploit vulnerable groups. But in practice, even with the Google Ad Grant, what it means is that sometimes the ads are so limited in what they can show that it's difficult to get in front of a wide enough audience to see a really good benefit from it. So, a couple of examples of types of organizations we've seen that with um, certain faith-based groups. So, like ironically, churches specifically, we have seen that with frequently, but not necessarily like organizations that have a faith-based focus, but whose primary mission is something else. So, um, they Google, for example, has some policies against targeting based on religious belief, which is fine if you're like, I don't know, a bookstore or something. But when you're a church, that's kind of difficult because, of course, you're going to be targeting based on religious belief. That kind of is what you're doing. So that's one example. Sexual health can be another one. There are a few different types of organizations. So you'll want to take a look at Google's advertising policies and just kind of see where your organization fits in. The other thing, which is related but not identical, is you also want to make sure that your cause has consistent search volume. Basically, that enough folks are interested in it for this to be a good medium for you. So, if you are maybe a organization that is promoting research for a extremely rare disease that's like very not well known, it may be difficult to get very many clicks because there may just not be a lot of people searching for what you are looking for. So I would recommend there are a lot of great free keyword tools out there. Moz is a really good one for organic search. SEMrush or SpyFu are good ones for, and by the way, this is being recorded. You'll receive the recording, etc. So if you want to play this back, you can hear me talk about those. But those are some good ones for advertising data. I would punch in, if you're thinking about this, I would punch a few of like the terms that are most relevant to your cause, your mission, what you do. Punch them into those tools. Just use the free version. You don't need to pay for anything, but and just take a look. If you're getting a couple hundred, couple thousand, tens of thousands, you are in the clear. But if you are seeing like, hey, all of our potential searches are only getting about 10 to maybe 50 searches a month, it may be that organic would be a better platform for you, at least for getting started, and you may have better luck through other more direct channels like email or possibly really targeted social media or something like that. So, those are a little bit of thoughts on what types of organizations do best with the grant. The other thing I find that folks want to know about is the ROI of the Google Ad Grant. This is a super tricky question in part because every organization has different goals with the Google Ad Grant. So there is no one fixed number. M&R Benchmarks does do a couple of different studies on this. And so depending on how you slice it, the Google Ad Grant is either a great ROI because you're not spending any money out of pocket, or it's reduced when we compare it to other forms of digital advertising. In my experience, the ROI of the Google Ad Grant kind of comes down to how clear organizations are on what their goal is and what those discrete goals are worth to them. So I've highlighted a couple of examples that I think are useful just to kind of elucidate the range of successful outcomes you can get with the Google Ad Grant. So one of our clients, Glacier National Park Conservancy, they are a big and sort of well-known organization. I'm not sure, to be honest, how well the Park Conservancy itself is well known, but certainly Glacier National Park is a well-known institution, at least in the US. So, for example, they, in a typical month, will get around 4,000 page views from their ads, get about 100 donations. They might get about 10 purchases to their store, and they tend to spend the vast majority, if not sometimes a little bit more than that 10,000 per month. So they're spending about 98% of the grant month to month. We could contrast that with Kids Saving the Rainforest, which is a wildlife rescue and sort of sanctuary. They're based in Costa Rica. So they are a much smaller, much more local organization. And a really critical part is that like visiting is a huge part of their mission. So they tend to get in a typical month more around the range of like 300 views from ads. But things that are super important for them are booking paid tours. So that's one of the things they do. They tend to get about 36 of those in a given month from ads, and volunteers to help just keep up with the sanctuary. They tend to get about 52 volunteer applications from the ad grant per month. Because they're super local and because they're kind of operating at a different scale than GNPC, they tend to spend more like 3,000 of that ad grant. I think when you are thinking about the ROI of the ad grant, one maybe this is a controversial opinion that I have, but my controversial opinion about this is that I don't think the amount spent of the ad grant is the most useful metric. I think the number of conversions, as long as you have put together a conversion strategy that is meaningful and is based on outcomes that help your organization grow, I think those are what you really want to be focused on. So for KSTR, that 3,000 is sufficient to help them grow their organization by bringing in folks who are interested in tours and by bringing in volunteers. So that's an example. Last Chance for Animals is more of an, I realize I accidentally put together a very animal theme here, but Last Chance for Animals is a organization that's very advocacy focused. So similar to Glacier National Park, they get a couple thousand views to their ads each month. They typically get a bit fewer donations. They get around 45, but other focuses for them include signups to their email and clicks to their social media buttons. Then they get around 100 of those per month. And again, they're spending about 8K of that total ad grant in a typical month. Serverham's the last example. They are a dog rescue and dog sanctuary based in Bangalore. They tend to get quite a lot of views. So they are usually doing more like 7,000 in a typical month. Again, getting about 38 donations from ads in a typical month and spending around $9,000. So the interesting thing about Sarvoham is that they run multinational campaigns in the sense that they run some ads in India, they run some ads in the US, and so they're able to kind of hit both markets there. So there are a lot of different ways you could understand ROI. All of these clients consider themselves to be getting a good ROI, even though you can see that their numbers look super different. So I think when you're thinking about the ROI of the ad grant, it's worth thinking about kind of what are the outcomes worth to you? What are some of the numbers you're hoping to hit there? And then evaluating, okay, are we on track to hit those outcomes? So again, there is not a one size fits all strategy to success with the ad grant. Every organization is different, every cause is different, but there are some best practices you can take based on your data. So first of all, using those machine learning based campaign settings is a really great way to improve your results. I really would not recommend for most people on this call trying to manually do everything. I think one, that's very time consuming, and two, I think it's unlikely to provide better results than what Google is doing, if only for the bid cap thing alone. Another actionable thing you can do, Google provides a search terms report very regularly that I think it's actually updating in real time, but at any rate, it is basically a report of, hey, here's all the search terms that your ads were shown on and how many clicks you got, how many eyeballs, call that impressions, were on the ad, etc. You can use this in two ways. One, you can use it to find what your ads are actually appearing for. So sometimes, depending on what your cause area is, depending on what your organization's name is, et cetera, you might start appearing for searches that aren't very relevant. So you can take those out. But the other thing it allows you to do is figure out, Google is working all around the clock to show ads, to add keywords, to figure out connections between different queries. So Google is finding you people who you may not have even realized a certain keyword was going to be beneficial for your organization. That can both improve your advertising strategy, but then you can take the learnings from that and also apply it in the organic area, on your website as you continue to build it out. And when you are building your campaigns, you're picking keywords, you're optimizing landing pages, you're choosing those conversion actions, really, really, really focus on relevance, both to your organization, to your growth, and to your audience. What I don't want to see anyone on this call do is get in their Google Ad Grant account and say, like, best nonprofit or something like that. These are overly generic keywords. It's very unlikely that one, that you'll show up, but two, even if you did, somebody who is searching best nonprofits, there is no guarantee that they are necessarily interested in specifically you, what you do, etc. I think that's uh, swinging a little too far for the fences. I would instead focus on things that very closely align with who you are and what you do. So again, these terms like animal shelter, um, you know, children's food organization. I don't know. I'm trying to think of more examples off the top of my head so I don't go with animal shelter all the time. But these are the things that are going to inspire somebody to actually click when they're served the ad if you think that you're answering their query. So really focus on that relevance piece. And I want to wrap up by just mentioning how getting attention can help. So, we do help clients to acquire and to maintain their Google Ad Grant. We do that by helping them set an advertising strategy, handling all of the keyword research based on what their goals are, helping them create campaigns from start to finish. So, we do all the ad text writing, we make sure everything's structured properly, we seek feedback, incorporate that, and then push it live. And then we report on an ongoing monthly basis about what the results were, what we would recommend for next steps. All right, so that is everything I had. I see that there are some questions in the questions tab, which is super great. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into those now. So first step, Carrie Essman asks, to confirm, we can use the Google Ad Grant for paid ads. Answer to that is yes. I need to do a really important asterisk here. You can use them for paid Google search ads. So this will not help you for example, display ads. So those ads that appear like on the side of the screen, at the top of the screen, and follow you around the internet. Those are a different offering, essentially. And it won't, of course, help with like Meta or anything that's not Google. But yes, you can use the Google Ad Grant for Google paid search ads. Can this presentation be sent to us separate for the recorded content? Let me look into that. I am not sure off the top of my head. We usually just send the recording, but at the very least, the recording will last for a long time, so you can pause, take a little screenshot, take some notes, etc. Um, Someone asked this, and I have the same question. We are a nonprofit, but we receive government funding. Are we still able to receive the grant? This is a great question. And so this kind of goes back to, again, that is not published anywhere from Google. This is my speculation about government funding. So I would say when in doubt, go ahead and apply for the ad grant. It truly only takes about 10 minutes to do. It's not a super daunting, not a super time consuming process. I have seen a range of outcomes. So I have seen organizations that do get some level of government funding, like whether that's small grants or things like that. I have seen them get the ad grant, successfully use it, not ever have it be a problem. I've also seen organizations that are kind of like government private partnership type things not get approved. So there is kind of a range. And unfortunately, I think at the end of the day, it probably comes down to what the specific employees who happen to be reviewing the application think. One client story I can tell you about this is we ran into trouble. One of our clients is a university studies abroad consortium. So they are an organization that helps US students get funding and find programs to study abroad. So they originally were having some grief. This was back when TechSoup was still the validation partner, but they were originally having some grief trying to get approved for the Google Ad Grant because Google kept incorrectly assuming they were part of a university because they had like .edu in their address, and they originally had been part of a university. Anyways, there was like a whole saga with us going to TechSoup back in the day, getting getting it straight with them, like, hey, we are not affiliated with an organization, we don't receive any funding, it's all private, like blah blah blah, and then getting it approved that way. So my experience has been if you can lay out why you meet the requirements, usually the folks are fairly willing to approve or like fairly willing to take another look. But I think, like I said, my guess as to why that exists or why those categories are excluded is probably to prevent conflict of interest from for Google. So that is kind of the best information I can give you. Ashton asked, will this recording be sent to us? I'm having internet problems, so I'm missing information. Yes, it will be sent to you, and hopefully that audio quality should be super clear. All right, I also see that there's some new stuff in the chat. Oh, Ariel asks, are we only allowed to link our organization's website? Yes, with an asterisk. There's a few of those around the Google Ad Grant. Generally speaking, it's best to have your site be the things that you are linking in your Google Ad Grant account. Google really wants to see that you are running ads to your own website, to your own domain. There are a couple of different ways I've seen organizations do different things with their ad grant. So, one situation that sometimes comes up is they're like, hey, we have multiple like programs or like I'll call them ministries, even though that's kind of like a more faith-based word, but like we have basically multiple different programs. It made more sense for our purposes to house them in different websites. Can we still advertise them using that same grant account? Answer for that is yes. You would just add that second website as an approved domain in your ad grant account. So that's one way. Another way that folks can sometimes advertise links that are not on their website. There are a certain number of approved donation softwares. I'm sorry, I wish I had that list off the top of my head. I don't. But if you look in the ad grant help documents, I think like Blackbaud is one. I think Classy is another. But there's like a certain list. I think there's about 7 or 8 approved donation platforms that you can link directly to. So if you have like a donation page for your organization, it doesn't live on your site, but it's like, classy.yourorganization.org or whatever. You can link to those. As far as, like, other things, so, for example, you're like, "Could I just link directly to my Facebook page from the ad?" The answer is no. You usually have to do a workaround for that, which is, like, leading people to a page that has that link on it and then setting clicking that link as a conversion so that Google will find you more people who will do that. That's usually the workaround for things like that. That's also a way that we have used, the ad grant to promote events because sometimes, like, event platforms also aren't they don't always play nice with the Google Ad Grant, so the easiest way to do that is, again, have an events page, link out, and then encourage Google to find folks who will click those links. All right, I think I answered Catherine's question. How can we leverage AI to support the development of keywords and content for our Google Ad Grant? Great question. And I think we will probably have like time for this one and then maybe one more before we wrap up here. But AI is a huge topic right now. It is all of us in the marketing world. So I think that there are a couple of thoughts with AI, and I also want to again like leave you with the thought that this is new, super recent developing technology. So I think what we consider best practices today may not be the same best practices that we will be talking about even like as soon as 6 months from now as things develop. So in the world of AI, you could use it on either the content end, whether that is website content or ad content. You could use it in the keyword research end, and you could also use it, or you could also think about it, I suppose, on Google's end. So I'm going to start with the website. I think AI is a really great tool to help generate content faster. What I've seen organizations do, and I think this has been fairly effective, we use this occasionally for getting attention. I don't think I've quite got it trained the way I would really like it to. So a lot of our stuff is still written by humans, but are the way I've seen organizations use it is basically training AI on all of their previous communications, training it on their personas, so their donor personas, etc., and then basically asking for it to generate content that would appeal to that person. Typically, I've seen them use it for social media or email content, but you could theoretically use it to help build website content. What I will caution you against, do not Just punch something into ChatGPT, copy paste it, push it live, and then expect Google to respond well to that. So far, indications have not been that Google responds very positively to purely AI generated content. What I think has been better, what I have seen from my friends in the SEO space that I think has been more effective in incorporating AI into that workflow is basically saying, hey, I want content that appeals to this audience and it's going to center on this keyword. Can you craft me an outline? ChatGPT is going to spit out something that is fairly well fleshed out and basically says, hey, this is kind of the flow you're going to want to take your readers through. I would recommend taking that outline, fleshing it out, building on it, providing that expertise that you and your team can provide, and then using that to push it live so that we're kind of blending that AI and human work there. From the keyword generation standpoint, it's super easy, especially as a very, very first step in your keyword research process. It's super easy to punch like basically go into ChatGPT and be like, hey, give me a list of like 20 keywords based on this website. Put your website in there and it'll probably give you as many keywords as you ask it for. They may or may not be relevant, but it's a good place to start. What I would do if you have the ad grant, Google's keyword planner tool is honestly a little bit better at this. It'll do basically the same thing if you put your website in. And the benefit of that is it also gives you an idea of how Google reads your website, not just how ChatGPT reads your website. So that can be useful considering that the final arbiter of success here is Google. And then the other thing it does is it suggests a bunch of other similar keywords. So that's a great use of ChatGPT, especially if you're like, I don't really even know where to start. It's very user friendly in that way. So that would be a good place to start. And then I would back it up with research in Google's own tools. And then as far as ad text goes, again, I think similar approach to what I would take with the like website content element. ChatGPT tends to be really wordy, so my suspicion is that you will not get out of writing a lot of ad text by hand because it's going to exceed the character count quite frequently. But those are a couple ways you could use it. When we think about, oh, and I am running out of time, but if we think about how Google uses AI, the presence of AI in search results is altering the types of keywords that are really successful in the ad grant accounts. So this is ongoing and it's not super consistent, something we're responding to. But this is, I think, why it's beneficial to target not just action or like not just awareness based keywords, but also action based keywords and vice versa, just making sure you're covering lots of different outlets here. All right, I think I can stay on for maybe 5 more minutes, but I will really not fault anybody if they have to leave. I understand we are running long, and you'll get the recording if you want to catch up on anything. Um, all right, question. What are the most common pitfalls nonprofits face when maintaining compliance with Google's ad grant policies? And how can we ensure our campaigns consistently meet these requirements? What are some best practices for optimizing? How can we effectively integrate Google Ads campaigns with our existing outreach strategies? All amazing questions. I wish I had time for all of those today. I'm going to address the most common pitfalls because I actually often have a slide that talks about that in these types of presentations. I cut it for time for today, but the common pitfalls that I see. One is trying to advertise on keywords that have nothing to do with your mission. This is why I harp on relevance so much. I see nonprofits who think very aspirationally, particularly when it comes to donations. And this is something that is probably beneficial for this audience, especially the path that we see most people take when they donate to a nonprofit via the Google Ad Grant is not we run a donate campaign, they click donation, they click on the donate page and then they donate right there. That does happen, but it's not the vast majority of people, especially not when you're talking about smaller organizations, more community-based organizations and not like really huge organizations where people already knew they wanted to donate and they were just looking for the website, right? What they do instead is they learn about the program through, or they learn about the nonprofit through like the programs link. They get to the like why our cause is important pages on the website. They read more, they are, persuaded or convinced via that, and then they donate. So I also think overemphasizing the donations like campaign and really, really, really restricting that is really kind of restricting the power of the Google Ad Grant and kind of what it can do for you. The other one, and this is like a little bit of a controversial take, I think, in the marketing realm, but I am not a huge fan of super locally targeted campaigns for a couple of reasons. Google only has as good of information as the user provides to them. So if you have users who are, for example, maybe they're not logged in to their Google account, maybe they have really effective ad blockers and stuff like that on their computer, all these various reasons, your users may be in a specific target area, like they may be in Atlanta, but Google may not be able to tell. So I am not a huge fan of local targeting because I think it unnecessarily restricts the account. The other reason that I don't think it's the best technique is because pairing that with the fact that Google's very smart, Google will figure out who your best audience is over time by running ads and by showing them to various people, seeing who clicks, and kind of shifting away from audiences that don't click. And I think this is beneficial because there are lots of types of missions where, yes, your primary audience is going to be the very local area, but you sometimes might have folks who are far flung who may also be interested in your mission and may be interested in supporting. So, examples I can think of would be like potentially museums or like arts organizations. If you have a in-person thing, your person may not live in Austin, Texas, but they may be visiting, and so your ad might be relevant to them if they're looking up like a theater or something like that, right? Similarly, I think like anything doing anything to do with elder care is another great example of a mission where, yes, the immediate people you serve may be in your immediate area, but usually adult children are taking a heavy role in caring for their parents, et cetera, and they may be located states away. So Google is going to do a good job of honing in on that audience over time. We have a client that we work with that is based in Utah. We found that their audience, again, we have not set restrictions on the locations for that account over time. Their audience has narrowed largely to Utah, but we do get these other states that are interested in participating. Maybe these are folks who are visiting, maybe they're just folks who support the mission. Hard to say. So I'm not a huge fan of overly local restricting an ad grant account. All right. I would love to be able to hang out here all day, and you guys have been such a great audience and super really engaged, and so I really appreciate that. If you have more questions, you can reach out to me and my team at the email address here. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I would be happy to touch base with you. We also have tons of resources on gettingattention.org about the ad grant, about other elements of nonprofit marketing. So feel free to dig into the resources there, and I hope this is useful to you. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope you have a good weekend ahead. All right. Thanks, everybody.